Being in your 20s is tough, but some people are into their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 50s. Stay tuned. Hello again, everyone. I'm Eli's dad with Project Eli, where we educate, we lead, excuse me, and we clear our throats and we inspire. And I had read an article by a gentleman named Nicholas Cole that talked about things that he learned in his 20s. I'm going to go through some of those using his pros in some cases, and of course my very valuable 2 cents in others. And I want to share with you, and the why and because of that is people mature at different speeds, and people get started. They have an epiphany at different age levels. So, you know, the author Nicholas Cole talks about, I discovered these things in my 20s. Sometimes your 20s don't happen until your 40s. So let's go over a few of these, all right? And I'm going to start by reading from his article. I like his beginning very, very much. Being in your 20s is tough. It's this weird limbo stage where you're considered an adult, but you really aren't fluent in adult language or responsibilities yet. You need help filing your taxes. You don't really understand how your 401k works. You want to invest because you heard investing is smart, but you don't know where to start. You're financially independent, but you're not really sitting on a cushion of cash. You know what you like, but you're not really sure if you like it enough to do it for the rest of your life. It's this confusing time when nothing seems to be set in stone, yet you feel like you're expected to have everything figured out and ready to go. Here are some brutal truths that the author learned, he says, in his 20s. Like I said, sometimes you don't learn these until your 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond. First one, nobody cares. Nobody cares if you didn't have enough time, if your toilet flooded, if you weren't feeling well, if you are going through a tough time. Some people do. They care a little bit and want to make sure you're okay. But really, in general, nobody really cares. Everybody has stuff going on in their lives, and it's on you to figure it out and stay on top of your responsibilities. Really, you're going to find that that's true. People will sympathize, some may even empathize, but to be candid with you, as soon as you separate, for the most part, unless they are unconditionally in love with you, like a father to a son, Eli, they don't care. It's a brutal truth. Second, if you're on time, you're late. This is something that I learned from my mentor, Bob Anderson. He was the first one I ever heard use the phrase, and you've probably heard it before, Lombardi time. What is Lombardi time? Lombardi time means if you're supposed to be someplace at 10 o'clock, that you make sure your butt is there at 9:45, at least 15 minutes early. And this is especially true if you're going to a meeting, a job interview, things of that nature. You want to get the lay of the land and not arrive and say, okay, here I am, let's go. It doesn't work out well for you if you do that. Make sure that you're always in Lombardi time, named after the famous football coach Vince Lombardi, because if he held a practice and you showed up on the dot, you were late and had to run. Make sure that you're always at least 15 minutes early for your appointments. 3, you have nothing to prove. Brutal truth. As a 20-something, you feel like you have a lot to prove. You don't. Trying to prove how much you know ends up only highlighting how much you don't know. Instead, be accepting of your inexperience and open yourself to acknowledging how much more there is out there for you to learn. It will open the door for those around you to teach you. This was one of the most critical things in my own personal development. My very first mentor, aside from my dad, was a gentleman named Mort Mutnick, who would when I worked with a company in sales, I was doing pretty well, and he said, maybe I have something here. Would pull me aside. You want to be a sponge. You may not agree with everything, you may not understand everything, but capture everything and store it away. Because trust me, later on in life, that lesson will come up. And as Mr. Mutnick used to say to me, knowing that the way I would feel as a young man, he'd say, somewhere down the road, you're going to say, oh, that's Mort Mutnick, number 26. And then it will click with you. Just the same way as things that your dad tells you, a lot of the times you don't recognize as being reality at the time he tells you, then you say to yourself, now I get what he was talking about. The same thing will be true in your 20s. Make sure that you like a sponge and that you're able to absorb and capture. Fourth, reading is extremely important. It's truly amazing how many people stop reading books once they graduate from their highest level of education. Blogs, magazines, podcasts, and documentaries, not to mention seminars, are all great ways to learn. But they do not and cannot replace the art of reading. Why? When you pick up the book, if you're listening to somebody speak or watching something, they're speaking, and you may pick up this and you may pick up that. If you're reading, you have to be focused on the words, and you retain things at a much higher level. Always remember, set aside, a good rule of thumb is to set aside a minimum of 15 to 20 minutes every single day where you're reading something. It doesn't have to be related to your particular field. It can be some other expert, it can be fiction, it can be whatever, but start filling your head with new ideas. That's how you're able to expand, and it helps you a great deal under the heading of creativity. Fifth, you are a reflection of the 5 people with whom you spend the most time. You've heard this one over and over and over. When you are a youngster, you hang around with the people that are giving you the most fun. Isn't that true? Don't you hang? Okay, I used to hang around with, I had friends for fun, I had friends for basketball, so on and so forth. One of the things that you got to remember is you become a conglomerate of those people. So it's so important to pick and choose your friends carefully. And Eli, especially right now, you're 16, almost 17 in a couple of months. Well, 6 months, 16 and a half. The point is, you're at an age when you can be influenced a great deal. And one of the things you want to remember is take a look at the people around you, see where they're headed, and say to yourself, is that where I want to be headed? If it's not, then make a decision to analyze the time you're spending with people and accordingly spend the time with people that are going to help you to get where you want to go. Does that make some sense? All right, giving you 5 things right now today, that brutal truths that you will learn in your 20s, whether your 20s are in your 20s, 30s, 40s, or 50s. Got a couple more. I've got more for you next time we get together. Once again, huge shout out to Nicholas Cole for giving me this idea and for allowing me to steal some of his prose directly from his article. And always remember, hey, don't ration the passion, fashion the passion. I'm Eli's dad.